IXL Section X.2, Match Exponential Functions and Graphs. Okay, this IXL is super easy and super important. I know right now what you're seeing on the screen looks very complicated, but this IXL, I'm going to show you how to look at the graphs and pick the correct one without doing any work whatsoever. Okay? That's how important this IXL is. It's going to show you how to pick the right graph without doing any work, no calculations, nothing. All right? So please pay attention to this lesson. It will help you tremendously. All right? I'll explain everything in 1 second, everything that you're seeing on the screen in 1 second. Okay? Este IXL es súper importante y súper fácil. Le voy a enseñar cómo escoger el gráfico correcto sin hacer ningún trabajo, ninguna calculaciones, nada. Simplemente mirar y escoger el gráfico correcto cada vez sin hacer ningún trabajo. Así que por favor pongan atención. Okay, so in this IXL, all the questions are going to be picking, like they're going to give you an exponential function and you got to pick the correct graph out of multiple choice possibilities, all right? And I'm going to explain to you how to read this and what to look for, and it's going to be very simple to pick the right answer every time, all right? You could do it in 10 minutes, just picking the right picture every time, okay? So first of all, let's analyze what this says, okay? First, here they have an example of an exponential function. It says y equals 3 times 2 to the x power. Okay, remember up here is what our exponential function, here's the form of an exponential function. Y equals ab to the x power. Okay, now look what it's saying here. Just take one thing at a time and you'll see that it's simple. It's nothing difficult. It's saying that, okay, notice that a is greater than 0. In other words, a is a positive number. A is a positive number. The ones down here, a is a negative number. That's why here it says a is less than 0, a is less than 0. I'll get to those in a second. Right now, let's just look at the two on the top. So again, they're pointing out that in these two examples, a is a positive number. A is greater than 0. Okay, let me just say that in Spanish real quick. Okay, recuerden que la forma general de una función exponencial es y igual a b a la x. A multiplicado por b a la x. Ok, ahora primero vamos a mirar los ejemplos de arriba. Lo primero que quiero que se den cuenta es que aquí está diciendo que a es un número positivo. A es más grande que 0. Así que a, que es el número al principio, es un número positivo en los dos ejemplos de arriba. Okay, now the other thing I want you to point, well, let me tell you what that means. All right, you see this line right here? Look at this line, okay? That line, I know it's the x-axis, but let me call it something else for a moment. Let's call it this. I'll explain what this is. Asymptote. All right, that line is called an asymptote. I know it may sound a little funny, but asymptote. All right, so look, what that line is you see this graph here? It's when we go to the left, it's approaching this asymptote, the x-axis, but it's never going to reach it. It's just going to keep getting closer and closer and closer as it continues into infinity without reaching it. Same thing with this one. That's why it curves like that. It's going to continue to approach into infinity the asymptote without ever reaching it. Okay, so why am I pointing this out? Because look, if we look at the examples on the bottom, here's the asymptote. Okay, so this is what I want to point out. When a is positive, like in the top two examples, when a is a positive number, the graph is above the asymptote. Right? So this horizontal line, my graph is above it. And when a is negative, as in the bottom two examples, look, right here you got -1, right here you got -2, the graph lies below the asymptote. All right? So when a is positive, the graph of the line is above the asymptote. And when a is negative, the graph of the line is below the asymptote. All right, so that's the first thing I'm pointing out. Let me say that in Spanish before I continue. Okay, así que lo que quiero que se den cuenta, primero que nada, esta línea en rojo, que para estos ejemplos son el axis de X, pero en un momento vamos a verlo en diferentes lugares. Pero esta línea, la línea horizontal, se le llama en inglés un asymptote. Eso es una línea que el gráfico de esta línea sigue acercándose al asymptote hasta el infinito, pero nunca llega hasta el asymptote. Se sigue poniendo más y más cerca, pero nunca lo toca, nunca lo va a tocar. ¿Ok? Así que lo primero que quiero que se den cuenta es que en los ejemplos de arriba, A es un número positivo. Aquí y aquí son números positivos. Si A es un número positivo, el gráfico de la línea está arriba del asymptote. Y en los dos ejemplos de abajo, A es un número negativo y el gráfico de la línea está debajo del asymptote. ¿Ok? Así que eso es lo primero que se tienen que dar cuenta. Y la segunda parte, the second part, let me explain the second part. The second part has to do with the B. All right, look at B. If B is greater than 1, if B is a number greater than 1, look how it's going upwards here and down here. If B is greater than 1, it's the same thing, but going in this direction. And if B is greater than 0, but less than 1, in other words, if B is a fraction or a decimal less than 1, okay, then the graph of the line is heading towards the asymptote. Let me say that again. All right, let me say that again. If B is greater than 1, if B is a number greater than 1, the graph of the line is going up this way, and if this number is negative, it'll be going down this way. Away. Okay, let me say that better. The graph of the line is going away from the asymptote. So, because remember, here's the asymptote, and here's the asymptote. All right, so if B is greater than 1, the graph of the line is going away from the asymptote that way, or away from the asymptote this way. And if B, it says it right here, if B is greater than 0 but less than 1, in other words, either a fraction or a decimal between 0 and 1, okay, then the graph of the line is heading towards the asymptote. If I look at this from left to right, the graph of the line is heading towards the asymptote. All right? Okay, when I get to the examples, hopefully this will all make more sense, okay? Ahora sobre lo que estaba diciendo sobre la letra B, okay? Si B es un número más grande que 1, entonces el gráfico de la línea sigue en la dirección opuesta del asymptote, ¿ok? No está yéndose más lejos del asymptote. Así que el asymptote, recuérdense que esta línea, así que como ve un número más grande que 1, la línea va en la dirección opuesta. Y aquí, este es el asymptote, B es un número más grande que 1, así que el gráfico de la línea está yendo en la dirección opuesta de el asymptote. Y si B es un número entre 0 y 1, una fracción o un decimal entre 0 y 1, entonces si lo miramos de izquierda a derecha, el gráfico de la línea se va acercándose al asymptote. Y aquí también, si lo miramos de izquierda a derecha, el gráfico de la línea se va acercándose al asymptote. And there's one more thing I got to add before we look at the actual examples, which is, okay, so there's one more element being added, which is this right here, this number right here. This number right here is going to be the asymptote. All right, this number is going to be the asymptote. The reason it wasn't in the examples we just saw is because in those examples, the asymptote was at 0. Okay, so that's why it wasn't written. But in these examples, it's not going to be at 0. You'll see what I mean in 1 second, okay? But basically, this number tells you what the asymptote, the horizontal asymptote is, okay? Where it's at. Okay, lo único más que le tengo que decir es que en una función exponencial, el número que está aquí te dice dónde queda el asymptote horizontal. En los ejemplos que acabo de hacer, no había un número aquí porque el asymptote estaba en en la línea y igual a 0. Pero en los ejemplos que vienen no está en 0. Ahora cuando vean los ejemplos van a ver que no es difícil, es bien fácil. All right, so look at our examples here. Okay, so I know it's kind of small, but I put this on all the slides. All right, so y equals abx plus c. All right, so look at our first example here. Here's my asymptote. All right, that dashed line, okay, which is at positive 2. It's located at positive 2. So right off the bat, that tells me that it's got to be one of these two answers. Because look at my answer choices. These say negative 2. So the asymptote is at positive 2. So it's between these two. Okay, lo primero que veo es que el asymptote está en positivo 2. Y le dije que el número aquí atrás es el asymptote. Así que la respuesta tiene que estar entre estos dos. Okay, now, is the graph of the line above or below the asymptote? It's below the asymptote. So that means that A has to be negative. So this has to be my answer. All right? El gráfico de la línea está debajo del asymptote. Así que A tiene que ser negativo. Así que A está debajo del asymptote. So there you go. There's the first example. No work required. Just look at it and pick the right answer. Look at the next example. My asymptote is at positive 6. So it's either this one or this one. Because my asymptote is at positive 6. Okay, el asymptote está en positivo 6, así que está entre estos dos. Is the graph of the line above or below the asymptote? It's above, so that means that A has to be positive. So it has to be this one. El gráfico de la línea está encima del asymptote, así que A tiene que ser positivo, así que esta es la respuesta. All right, so look at this one. Here's my asymptote at negative 5. So my answer is one of these two. Okay, el asymptote está en negativo 5, así que la respuesta es uno de estos dos. The graph of the line is below the asymptote, so it has to be, A has to be negative. Okay, but this one, look, they made this one a little bit more challenging because in this example, A is negative in both of them also. So now I got to look at the B. All right, let me just say that in Spanish. En este ejemplo lo hicieron más, un poquito más difícil porque el gráfico de la línea está debajo del asymptote, pero estos dos ejemplos, estas dos respuestas tienen A negativo. Así que ahora tengo que mirar la B. Okay, remember I said that if you look at it from left to right, if B is a number between 0 and 1, that means that the graph of this line will be getting closer to the asymptote from left to right. So this has to be the answer. I'll say it again. If B is between 0 and 1, or let me say that better. If we look at the graph of the line and from left to right, the graph of the line is getting closer to the asymptote, then that means that B has to be a number between 0 and 1. So it has to be this one. It can't be this one. I'll say it one more time because I could see people getting confused with that one. Let me erase all this. This is the correct answer. If we look at the graph from left to right, is this line getting closer to the asymptote? Yes, it is. So if it's getting closer to the asymptote, that means that B, which is this number right here, has to be a number between 0 and 1. Okay? Si miramos a la línea y la línea se está acercando al asymptote de izquierda a derecha, esto quiere decir que B tiene que ser un número entre 0 y 1. Así que tiene que ser este, no puede ser esta respuesta. All right, it has to be this one, not the one above it. All right, let's look at some more examples. All right, so first of all, the asymptote, see, this one's slightly different because we got 4 graphs. The asymptote is at positive 2. So it's got to be either this one or this one. It's between these two because the asymptote is at positive 2 in both. Or actually, wait, I'm sorry. From this picture, it's got to be this one, actually. Because this is the only one that has the asymptote at positive 2. Let me just check everything else to make sure. Okay, the negative sign, there's a number missing, so that means there's a negative 1 there. All right, that stands for negative 1. That tells me that the graph of the line is below the asymptote. And because B, which is this number, B is greater than 0 but less than 1, that means that the line is going to be getting closer to the asymptote from left to right. So this is the correct answer for this one. Ok, para este, primero que nada, solamente hay una respuesta que tiene el asymptote en positivo 2, pero para también practicar lo demás, el signo negativo me dice que tiene que estar debajo del asymptote. El gráfico de la línea está debajo del asymptote y como B es un número más grande que 0, B es un número entre 0 y 1, así que el gráfico de la línea se está acercándose al asymptote de izquierda a derecha. All right, let's look at this one. The asymptote is at -1. So I got 3 possibilities. No, 4. All 4 of these have the asymptote at -1. So that doesn't help us. All right. Las 4 respuestas tienen el asymptote en -1. All right, so let's check the other stuff. First of all, let's check A. A is negative, so that means that the graph of the line has to be below the asymptote. So it's between these two. Okay, A es un número negativo, así que el gráfico de la línea tiene que estar debajo del asymptote, así que está entre estos dos. Okay, now B, look at B. B is this number right here. B. Okay, B is greater than 1. B is greater than 1. That means that when you look at the graph of the line from left to right, if it's greater than 1, it's got to be moving away from the asymptote, not towards the asymptote from left to right. So this has to be the correct answer. Again, if B is greater than 1, that means from left to right, it's got to be moving away from the asymptote, not towards the asymptote like this one. So this is the correct answer and this one is wrong. Si B es un número más grande que 1, eso quiere decir que cuando miro el gráfico de la línea de izquierda a derecha, se tiene que estar moviendo en la dirección opuesta del asymptote, no acercándose al asymptote como en esta. Así que esta tiene que ser la respuesta. All right, over here, my asymptote is at -1. Let me make sure I'm not repeating the same. Yeah, that's the one I just did. Whoops, I made a mistake. All right, let me skip this one. Let's look at these. Okay, so let's look at these. Which equation matches this graph? All right. So first of all, my asymptote is at -1. So it's between this one and this one. Okay, el asymptote está en -1, así que tiene que estar entre estos dos. My graph of the line is beneath the asymptote, so A has to be negative. So this has to be my answer. All right, el gráfico de la línea está debajo del asymptote, así que A tiene que ser negativo, así que esta tiene que ser mi respuesta. And just to practice regarding the letter B, if B is sorry guys, I'm having trouble talking, making this video late. If B is a number greater than 1, that means that the graph of the line has to be moving away from the asymptote, which it is. Okay, recuerden que si B es un número más grande que 1, el gráfico de la línea se tiene que estar moviendo en la dirección opuesta del asymptote. Okay, let's look at the next example. All right, in the next example, the asymptote is at +3. All right, my asymptote is at +3, so it's got to be between these two possibilities. Okay, el asymptote está en +3, así que está entre estos dos. Is the graph of the line above or below the asymptote? It's below. So that means that A has to be negative. That means this has to be my answer. Because in the wait, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the other one was also negative. So wait, let me keep checking on it. All right, so in both of these answers, A is negative. So that didn't solve our problem. All right, so let's look at B. Okay, from left to right, is the line moving closer to the asymptote? Yes, it is. From left to right, it's moving closer to the asymptote. So that means that B has to be between 0 and 1. B has to be a number between 0 and 1. So that means that this one would be the correct answer. Okay, en este ejemplo, los dos tienen el asymptote en +3 y los dos estas dos respuestas tienen A negativo, porque la línea está debajo del asymptote, pero solamente esta, recuerden que de izquierda a derecha, si la línea se está acercando al asymptote, B tiene que ser un número entre 0 y 1, así que por eso es que esta es la respuesta. All right, next one, the asymptote is at -6. I could stop right there because this is the only answer that has the asymptote at -6 out of all of these. All right, so that's an easy one. El asymptote está en -6 y esta es la única respuesta que tiene el asymptote correctamente ahí. Let me pause the recording for one moment. Okay, a few more examples. So in this first one, it says which graph matches this equation. Notice that in this one, for C, nothing is written. If nothing is written, that means that C is 0. That's why the asymptote is at 0 for all of them. All right, so keep that in mind. Okay, aquí no hay ningún número escrito atrás donde debe ir la C. Así que eso quiere decir que el asymptote está en 0, que sería el axis de X. All right, so first of all, is A positive or is A a negative number? A is a positive number. That means that the graph of the line has to be above the asymptote. So it's between these two possibilities because these are the only two where the graph of the line is above the asymptote. A es un número positivo, así que tiene que estar entre estos dos porque son los únicos dos donde el gráfico de la línea está encima del asymptote o arriba del asymptote. Now B is a number between 0 and 1. That means that from left to right, the graph of the line has to be getting closer to the asymptote. So that means that this is our correct answer right here. B es un número entre 0 y 1 y eso quiere decir que de izquierda a derecha la línea se tiene que estar acercándose a el asymptote. All right, over here my asymptote is at -6. So that eliminates this answer. It eliminates this one. So it's between these two. Okay, está entre estas dos respuestas. All right, so A is negative. That means the graph of the line has to be beneath the asymptote. So this has to be my answer. A es negativo, así que el gráfico de la línea tiene que estar debajo del asymptote, que solamente puede ser esta respuesta. All right, let's look at some more. Hopefully you're realizing what I said, that this is easy, and just knowing a few things, you can answer these questions without doing any work. All right, it's not as difficult as it may look. So which equation matches this graph? Okay, so my asymptote is at -1. So it's between this one and this one. Okay, the graph of the line is above the asymptote, so A has to be positive. In this one, A is positive, not in this one. So this has to be my answer. Okay, el asymptote está en -1 y el gráfico de la línea está arriba del asymptote, así que A tiene que ser positivo, así que solamente puede ser esta respuesta, no puede ser esta. All right, over here my asymptote is at +1. So all of the answer choices have the asymptote as +1, so that doesn't help me. The graph of the line is below the asymptote. So that means that A has to be a negative number. So it's between these two answers, right? Because A has to be negative. Okay, now B, if we look at the graph of the line from left to right, the line is getting closer to the asymptote. So B has to be a number between 0 and 1. So out of these two choices, by the way, in case you're having trouble reading that, what that means is y equals -1 times 2 to the x power. Let me write it like that, 2 to the x power. So A is -1 and B is +2. All right, but like I said, from left to right, the line is getting closer to the asymptote. So B has to be between 0 and 1. So this is my correct answer. Okay, así que estaba entre estas dos respuestas, pero B tiene que ser un número entre 0 y 1, porque la línea de izquierda a derecha se está acercando al asymptote. En este ejemplo, B es el número 2 y A es el 1, pero está invisible aquí, no se escribe si es 1. Negativo 1 por 2 a la X más 1. Así que B es 2 en este ejemplo, en esta ecuación. All right. Remember that the 1 is not written, it's invisible. All right. They just write the negative sign. All right. Let's look at the last example here. The asymptote is at negative 2. So it's between these two. Okay, the graph of the line is above the asymptote, so A has to be positive. And from left to right, the line is getting closer to the asymptote. So that means that B has to be between 0 and 1. So this has to be my answer. Okay, el asymptote es negativo 2. El gráfico de la línea está encima o arriba del asymptote, así que A tiene que ser positivo. Y de izquierda a derecha la línea se está acercando al asymptote, así que B tiene que ser un número entre 0 y 1. Okay, a few more examples. Okay, so right here, the asymptote has to be at negative 5, which all of these examples have the asymptote at negative 5. Okay, now look, let me spell it out for you. This one is A is negative 1, and B is 3 to the x power, okay, minus 5. So remember, this is the form y equals AB to the x power, well, plus C. All right, that didn't come out very good. My writing pad is messing up. Okay, so all right, so in this example, A is negative. A is negative. That means that the graph of the line has to be below the asymptote. So it's between this one and this one, because in both of these, the graph of the line is above the asymptote. So it's between these two. Okay, now B is a number greater than 1. And if B is a number greater than 1, that means from left to right, the line has to be moving away from the asymptote, not towards the asymptote. So this is my correct answer. Okay, así que todas las respuestas tienen el asymptote en negativo 5. A es negativo, eso quiere decir que el gráfico de la línea tiene que estar debajo del asymptote. Y B es un número más grande que 1. Eso quiere decir que de izquierda a derecha, la línea se tiene que estar alejándose del asymptote. Así que solamente puede ser esta respuesta. Over here, the asymptote is negative 5. So it can't be this one. And it can't be this one. It's got to be between these two. All right, because they both have the asymptote at negative 5. A is positive, so that means that the graph of the line has to be above the asymptote, which it is in both of these. So B is what's going to determine the answer. Look at B. Okay, B is between 0 and 1, so that means that from left to right, the line has to be getting closer to the asymptote, so this has to be the correct answer. Okay, B es un número entre 0 y 1, así que de izquierda a derecha la línea se tiene que estar acercándose al asymptote. All right, guys, all these examples on this IXL are like this. All right, so I'm going to stop there. I think that's plenty of examples. Remember, on this IXL, you should be doing absolutely no work. Just looking at the exponential function and identifying what you need to identify in order to pick the correct graph. No work on this IXL at all. All right, just look at the equation and match it to the correct graph. There can only be one answer in each problem, okay? En esta, creo que ya he hecho suficientes ejemplos porque en este IXL todos los problemas son como lo que he hecho. En este IXL no quiero que hagan ninguna calculaciones, ningún trabajo, solamente mirar la función y escoger el gráfico correcto, identificando lo que le he enseñado que tienen que identificar para poder coger el gráfico correcto. All right, guys. So again, this IXL is super important. Please make sure to do it because this is going to play a big part in the upcoming IXLs and more importantly on your upcoming exam in the algebra class as well as on the test that you have at the end of the year. So I can't emphasize enough, please do this IXL. Please make sure to do it on time because next class we're going to do more IXLs on exponential functions that go deeper into the topic. ¿Ok? Así que hagan este IXL porque es muy importante. Otra vez, esto está en muchas de las preguntas en el próximo examen que tienen en la clase de álgebra y en la clase el examen que tienen al fin del año. Y vamos a hacer más sobre esto en la próxima clase. Así que por favor, háganlo, practíquenlo para que cuando se ponga más complicado lo puedan entender. Alright guys, this concludes this lesson. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day and I'll see you guys next class.